All right, bipolar disorders. Um, okay, so what is bipolar disorder? Basically, bipolar being two polar opposites, right? And if you think like generally when people talk about, oh, this person's so bipolar, they change from one to the other. That's not what bipolar is. You're more in line with a personality disorder if it is like that kind of extreme. All right. So, one of the things to know for bipolar one end is depression. All right. So think of depression. The other end is mania. And that's basically like either a very elevated mood or kind of very irritable mood. It depends, but you have increased energy, you don't need to sleep, increased risk taking and pleasurable activity, you seek it out. Risk taking is important because like when you're answering questions, risk is an important thing, so safety is an important thing. And people who are manic can make very risky choices and put themselves at risk. All right. So when it starts out in a manic episode, goal-directed behavior can be quite good. You might do a bunch of stuff, but then it kind of becomes more erratic as time goes on. And also another characteristic of mania is often grandiosity. So, people kind of like think they're flipping amazing or what have you. Mood lability. Lability is an important term because that means like rapid shifts in moods. All right. So periods of happiness followed by periods of low mood. But when we talk about rapid, we're not talking about like 10 minutes and stuff like that. That's more like your personality disorder stuff where it shifts incredibly from one extreme to another, like in borderline personality. It can do. Rapid cycling is extreme forms of mood lability. And basically, you have periods of mania and hypermania. Hypermania is not quite mania. You can have some insight and stuff like that in hypermania. Hypo being under, so it's under being manic. So whenever you're doing like stuff like with words, if hypo, it's under, so hypoglycemia, blah blah blah, all that stuff. Okay. So they alternate with depressive episodes. Bipolar 1 is the one that you're likely to get tested on, all right? Because that's kind of your main one. Bipolar 2, you have at least one episode of major depression and one hypomanic episode. But bipolar 1 is the one that kind of alternates. Cyclothymic, yeah, you're probably not going to be tested on it, but you don't quite meet the criteria, as it goes on for a couple of years, all right? And if it's like medication related or substance abuse related, obviously that's what that is. All right, I'm just going to flick through. So, symptoms, grandiosity. Oh, I'm the best at this, I'm the best at that, I'm wonderful, I do this, that, and the other. Decreased need for sleep. You often find these patients, they're up all night. Flight of ideas, distractibility, a lot of energy. But it becomes problematic because what happens is, you're not sleeping. Your body gets tired. You're not eating properly. Your body, isn't getting the nutrition it needs. It starts to go downhill. All right, so you become less and less functional, more and more chaotic. So this one, kids and that, yeah. I'm not going to go into this in a long way, but it's a mess how this came about with kids, but it's kind of got cleared up. I'd love to tell you, but this isn't for your exam. All right, so average onset for most people 21 to 30. It decreases with age. Men are more likely to have manic episodes. You're likely to have it with anxiety disorders or substance misuse disorders. That's worth knowing. And there's an interaction to genetic and psychosocial. One thing that can kind of thinking of is allostatic load. So the more stress and everything like that, it can increase the chance that you're going to have an episode. So you might be genetically predispositioned, have a very stress-free life, and never manifest that stuff. Or it might not work that way. You might end up having a very stressful goings on and everything, and manifest your disorder. All right. Now, I do want to mention kindling. This is actually important because it's come up in the past. Kindling actually came about as Originally, it was a theory for seizures. All right. So, and basically, with kindling, what basically, the concept is that, um, you have an episode, and the more episodes you have, the more mood episodes you have, it increases kind of physical, mental health problems, right? So there's an interaction between stress and brain development, and the more it goes on, the more susceptible you are to it. All right, until you have episodes, and then the more episodes you have that are unmanaged, unfortunately, the worse your potential outcome. All right. So working with patients. All right. So you want to teach them about the disorder. You want to, like, your recovery goal. You want to prevent manic and depressive episodes, and the main thing for that's medication. But mood stabilizers, a lot of patients don't like being on them because they reduce the extremes of feeling. Big issue is suicide and injury. From the depressed side, suicide. But from the manic side, there's risk of, like, risk taking, like, oh, I can do anything, jumping from one building to another, and you fall to your death. Also, one thing to note, you can have manic type symptoms with abnormal thyroid. All right. So, but it basically jeopardizes your socio-occupational relationships, marriages, especially if you're being hypersexual or something like that. I could tell you some stories about some of my patients with bad business decisions, but I won't for a video. Okay, so communication, you have to be non-threatening. You want to be calm. You want to be direct and simple. Let's do this. You don't want to have open-ended sentences. Someone who's manic is going to talk at length in responding to your thing. You don't want to have confrontations and arguments. You want to limit your interactions, and you want to keep them safe, all right? So that might be moving someone away from, like, a bunch of other patients they're annoying. But another safety thing might be, not safety, but well-being. If someone's manic and they're pacing up and down, and they're not stopping to eat, you might need to give them high-energy snacks or something like that. All right, so that their nutritional stuff is in some way being met. All right. Now this is important. Oh, my little thing's covered. Oh, we don't want that. All right, this is important. Mood stabilizers. All right. So mood stabilizers. The chance, if there's a bipolar disorder question, that you're going to get a question on mood stabilizers is incredibly high. It's so high because this is like, this is just standard stuff, right? So, and lithium is the standard mood stabilizer. So there's a very high chance that you'll get a lithium question. It's not tolerated by about a third of patients. It's not very well tolerated, but it's a salt, right? So basically what happens then is the higher sodium, the lower lithium. The more lithium, if you're very low in sodium, then your lithium levels will end up quite high. So it's affected by sweating, heat and exercise, being out in the sun, and reduced body fluid, and it can lead to toxicity. So what is toxicity? Well, for the purposes of this, it's slightly different level in the NCLEX, but for the purpose of this book, our toxicity levels is 1.5 for mild, 1.5 to 2.5 for moderate, and 2.5 plus for severe. But Lance, how do we work out the difference between, remember, this huge list of symptoms? Well, you don't really need to remember this huge list of symptoms. The reason you don't is because you kind of can deduce it if necessary. All right. So at the mild end, metallic taste in mouth, a bit of nausea, you're peeing a bit, you're feeling a bit, you're pooping a bit, you're a little bit weak, you might gain a little bit of weight, get a little bit of fat, water retention, and your memory might go down a little bit. The severe end, we're talking cardiac arrhythmias, blackouts, nystagmus. If you know what that is, that's like a juddering of the eye from side to side. When it's following something, you see this little twitch going sideways. Fasciculations, which are like muscular twitches, visual and tactile hallucinations, oliguria, so not peeing at all because your kidneys are kicking in. It can trash your kidneys, basically. So we're kind of the severe end of stuff. Now the mid-range, because diarrhea is like a mild one. So if it's severe diarrhea is middle. Nausea and vomiting. Remember we were kind of saying, nausea is a mild end, but if you're like then throwing up, you've got into the range of moderate. Blurred vision, tinnitus, your ears are ringing, increased tremor, muscle irritability, increased tone. So when you get to the severe ones, they're like coarse tremor, blackouts. They're the kick-ass ones. All right, so you've got to remember the difference, and you can deduce it if you have a question. Depakote, it's not good for your liver. All these ones can impact you don't want to have a baby taking this stuff. Carbamazepine is one of the medications that gives you agranulocytosis. I'd be surprised if they test you on that because they tend to test that for Clozaril. Lamictal, so lamotrigine, that's like linked to Stephen Johnson. Now, in the book, and this is actually right, it says antidepressant therapy is not recommended. And it's not, because actually giving someone who's potentially can have I'm going off subject a bit, but who can have a manic episode, giving them an SSRI can actually trigger an episode. But often you'll find actually in real life, these days they'll often give an SSRI in the mix. It's not necessarily the best thing, but I'm not going to comment on that. All right, I'm going to jump through that.